Welcome to Idlewild Cottage, a quiet place where kindred spirits can linger together over a cup of tea, savoring all things lovely and cozy. My name is Juliana, and I'm delighted to have you. Each episode here at the cottage will center around a theme. That theme will be celebrated in a number of ways through literature, art, nature, and even some favorite movie scenes. We'll cherish the sweet and simple things of life. So make yourself at home, and I'll put the kettle on. If you were with us last week for our Choose Your Own November adventure, you might have made a choice about what the weather should be like on an ideal November day. A number of you shared your opinions on Instagram, and we discovered that our preferences are about half and half. 50% of you would choose a calm and mellow day, while the other half favor the moodiness of a brooding, blustery fall day. Here in the Pacific Northwest, November is typically gray and rainy. Many writers, Alcott and Montgomery included, have referred to November as a disagreeable month. So, to heighten the beauty and romance of a month which I believe has its own unique glories and graces, today we'll center our thoughts around that very practical tool, the umbrella. As prosaic as it sounds, an umbrella does allow us to step out into the changing world and seek out the hidden treasures of the season. I'll be sharing a number of umbrella related scenes today. Not all of them are necessarily set in the fall months, but I hope they inspire us to find beauty as the year ages and the landscape shifts more and more toward winter. The title of this episode, Under the Umbrella, is taken directly from Little Women. So let's slip into chapter 46 and note the romantic shelter an umbrella provides for Joe and Mr. Bear in the unromantically muddy streets of town. As we enter this scene, the two have misunderstood one another and are about to part ways without knowing each other's true feelings. Joe is rather blue about this. Never mind, I can walk. I'm used to plodding in the mud, returned Joe, winking hard because she would have died rather than openly wipe her eyes. Mr. Bear saw the drops on her cheeks. The sight seemed to touch him very much, for suddenly, stooping down, he asked in a tone that meant a great deal, Heart's dearest, why do you cry? Because you're going away. Oh, that is so good, cried Mr. Bear, managing to clasp his hands in spite of the umbrella. Joe, I have nothing but much love to give you. Can you make a little place in your heart for old Fritz? He added all in one breath. Oh, yes, said Joe, and he was quite satisfied, for she folded both hands over his arm and looked up at him with an expression that plainly showed how happy she would be to walk through life beside him, even though she had no better shelter than the old umbrella if he carried it. Now, though we've already discovered both a Little Women work of art and a Norman Rockwell piece in the Idlewild Cottage Enchanted Picture Frame, I hope you'll allow me to combine the two for this week's image. Rockwell's imagining of this umbrella scene takes its name from the line, Heart's dearest, why do you cry? This illustration appeared in the Women's Home Companion, an American magazine, in 1938. I especially love Joe's tender expression in this one, and I encourage you to look it up. That's Norman Rockwell's Heart's Dearest, Why Do You Cry? The iconic umbrella scene in Singin' in the Rain is also one in which love is in the air. Don Lockwood, that's Gene Kelly, and Kathy Selden, played by a 19-year-old Debbie Reynolds, have just stayed up for hours with their pal Cosmo Brown, Donald O'Connor, solving the problem of how to transform a silent film into a talkie. As Don leaves the home, he walks out into the dark, pouring rain, but his heart is light. He is in love. So naturally, he sings and dances about it. Gene Kelly's dance number here is pure poetry. You would never guess that he had a fever while performing this scene. The umbrella serves as a prop which he hardly uses to shelter himself from the rain. In fact, he closes it and stands under a waterspout to signify that not even a downpour can dampen his mood. Now, there are times when an umbrella features in a misguided romance, as in the case of Anne Shirley. Poor Anne is trying to understand her topsy turvy heart, which has a way of pushing Gilbert away. In Anne of the Island, we see that she is blinded by her romantic ideal, manifested in Royal Gardner, while walking through the park one blustery November day. Suddenly the rain came with a swish and a rush. Anne put up her umbrella and hurried down the slope. As she turned out on the harbor road, a savage gust of wind tore along it. Instantly, her umbrella turned wrong side out. Anne clutched at it in despair, and then there came a voice close to her. "Pardon me, may I offer you the shelter of my umbrella?" Anne looked up. Tall and handsome and distinguished looking, dark, melancholy, inscrutable eyes, melting, musical, sympathetic voice. Yes, the very hero of her dreams stood before her in the flesh. We pick up a few lines later. Together, they scurried to the pavilion and sat breathlessly down under its friendly roof. Anne laughingly held up her false umbrella. "It's when my umbrella turns inside out that I am convinced of the total depravity of inanimate things," she said. Of course, an umbrella does not always signify romance, real, misguided, or otherwise. Sometimes it's just the prop needed to deceive bees or rescue a piglet. Friends, are you familiar with the world of Winnie the Pooh? If you haven't read these stories from the original A. Milne books, I highly encourage you to do so. They are especially delightful to read aloud. When one wishes to deceive bees in order to collect honey from their tree, take a tip from Winnie the Pooh, who has concocted a brilliant plan. At this point in the story, Pooh has already done his part. He has rolled about in a very muddy place in order to more closely resemble a rain cloud. He is currently soaring next to the tree by aid of a blue balloon in the hopes of blending in with the sky. This will surely fool the bees and provide an opportunity to swipe some honey. Now it's time for Christopher Robin to lend his aid. "Christopher Robin?" "Yes." "Have you an umbrella in your house?" "I think so." "I wish you would bring it out here and walk up and down with it and look up at me every now and then and say, 'Tut, tut, it looks like rain.' I think if you did that, it would help the deception which we are practicing on these bees." We see later that, though he is a bear of very little brain, Winnie the Pooh lands on another brilliant plan, this time a plan to rescue Piglet. The 100-acre wood is flooded, and poor Piglet, who is entirely surrounded by water, has sent out an eloquent, all caps message in a bottle. "Help! Piglet! Me! It's me, Piglet! Help! Help!" The message eventually makes its way to Christopher Robin and Pooh, and it's Pooh who comes up with a solution. "We might go in your umbrella," said Pooh. Suddenly, Christopher Robin saw that they might. He opened his umbrella and put it point downwards in the water. It floated, but wobbled. They both got in together, and it wobbled no longer. "I shall call this boat the Brain of Pooh," said Christopher Robin, and the Brain of Pooh set sail forthwith in a southwesterly direction, revolving gracefully. You can imagine Piglet's joy when at last the ship came in sight of him. So far, we've seen both the romantic and practical nature of the umbrella. But what if it's neither? Well, then there's a pretty good chance it's a magical umbrella. Let's invite this poem to sweep us into Edwardian England. Winds in the east, mist coming in, like something is brewing and bout to begin. Can't put my finger on what lies in store, but I fear what's to happen all happened before. And what's about to happen? Mary Poppins is about to turn the world of the Banks family upside down. In response to an advertisement for a new nanny, Mary Poppins arrives at the home of George, Winifred, Jane, and Michael Banks. Of course, she doesn't arrive with the other applicants who have conventionally stood in line down the lane. No, Mary Poppins arrives by umbrella. As she does, those winds in the east sweep away the grim looking applicants and instead bring a spoonful of sugar to the inhabitants of number 17 Cherry Tree Lane. By the end of the film, we see a symbolic nod to the umbrella. Mr. Banks is dismissed from his position at the bank, and one of the humiliations cast upon him is the turning inside out of his umbrella. However, this also marks the turning inside out, if you will, of this straight laced head of the family, and he's a new man, more than ready to scoop up his family and go fly a kite as a result. Mary Poppins, the 1964 film starring Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke, has been a favorite for as long as I can remember. My mom made it especially meaningful at our bedtime when she'd sit at the piano and play us to sleep with songs like Stay Awake or Feed the Birds. By day, my sister and I liked to pretend we were Mary Poppins when cleaning our room. We'd snap our fingers and quickly whisk things into place as if by magic. I'm sure our mother thought it was a very magical way to tidy up the nursery. Before we wrap up our time together today, I'd like to take a peek into the Idlewild Post to thank a number of you for sharing your enjoyment of Jean Stratton Porter books. It was fun to hear that so many of you have read her works. Krista, Sarah, and Elizabeth all write that The Harvester is one of their favorites. Judy and Diane enjoyed Freckles, and Krista also notes that Keeper of the Bees is a great read. I haven't read that one, so I look forward to checking it out. Thank you for sharing, ladies. And friends, if you'd also like to reach out about any content here that inspires you to cherish the sweet and simple things of life, you can find me on Instagram at Idlewild Cottage. I so appreciate your likes, shares, comments, and positive reviews as we seek to reach out to other kindred spirits. Finally, let's turn to the Psalms, where we find the gift of a rainy day. Psalm 147 reads, "He covers the heavens with clouds, provides rain for the earth, and makes the grass grow in mountain pastures." Kindred spirits, would the rains of November serve as a reminder that He who orchestrates the seasons also covers you, umbrellas you, with His love. Thank you for joining me today, dear ones. Please come again soon to Idlewild Cottage.